Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video and hope you guys are doing well. Today in this video we're looking at raid buffs and debuffs in Cata. Now, buffs change slightly from Wrath and some of them become a lot more important. So it's really important that you get the right buffs in the right group. Now I'm going to go through the different buffs, which classes can and can't bring them, as well as common candidates to be picking up these buffs. Now, tomorrow I'm going to be releasing my raid comp video, so, if you like that sort of stuff, you should definitely like, comment, subscribe, and we can talk more in that video around melee, range comps, caster comps, that sort of thing, what sort of classes you'd want in either of those. But currently in this video, we're just going to smash through, talk about some good candidates for bringing buffs, and all that good stuff. So, plus 10% melee speed, enhancement, or every shaman can bring it, but typically it's going to be enhancement shammies, frost DKs with a talent, and survival hunters with a talent as well. Now, all three of these are pretty popular. Both shammies you're going to see in every group, survival hunters you're going to see in every group as well, pretty much. So you're expected to have this in most groups. Frost DKs a little bit overshadowed by an unholy, so maybe not as common. 5% crit. Now, feral druids are arguably going to be one of the best tanks in Cataclysm just in general, as that off-tank role. Mainly because a good feral druid will be able to jump in and out of cat form to maintain bleeds and things like that, and they will do about 80 to 90% of a normal DPS's damage while being a tank, which is insane. So leader of the pack shouldn't ever be an issue, but something interesting here is Elemental Shaman actually brings crit for everyone as well, whereas some of the other casters only bring spell crit. So actually a really good candidate to bring that if you're trying to create like the caster cleave. Sub rogues, sub is one of the hardest rogue specs to play in Cataclysm. However, if you can play it, it's one of the most rewarding. So having a buff brought from that is pretty good. Fury warriors, unfortunately overshadowed by arms ever so slightly, so maybe not likely to see rampage all too much. 10% attack power then. So enhancement shamans, you're going to see these in melee cleaves. Marksman hunter, you are not going to see very much in Cataclysm at all. Blood DKs with Abomination's Might, very good option to be able to pick these up. Blood DKs are the other good tank in Cataclysm. You're likely to see Blood DK Feral Druid be that common setup, maybe a prop pally thrown in there just for good measure every now and again. But Blood DKs are a very good option to take these kind of that talent. And paladins can bring it with Blessing and Might. Now, all paladins get Blessing and Might. They have 2 blessings to choose from now, rather than the collection of 3 or 4 with Sanctuary. And Might does Wisdom's effect as well. So it is very useful, does bring a lot. You're going to want to really have both. Now, they are shared with other things. Like I said, attack power is Unleash Rage, Abomination's Might, and Kings is brought by a druid with Mark of the Wild. So there is benefits. You don't have to bring 2 pallies, but actually having 2 pallies is very useful, and we'll talk more about that later. Spell haste then. So Balanced Druid, Shadow Priests, Shamans. In a caster comp, you're going to have all 3 of these. You're probably going to have either a Rest or an Elemental Shaman. You're going to have a Shadow Priest. You need one in every group, and you're going to have a Balanced Druid because you're going to want one in every group. So that shouldn't be an issue to pick up. Now, there's 10% spell power and there's 6% spell power. Why is there a difference? No one knows. Do they stack? Absolutely not. So you're going to want a Demonology Warlock or an Elemental Shaman in every caster group. You could probably get away with the 6% in a melee comp, but you're not going to get an Enhancement Shaman to run Flame Tongue Totem, so yeah, it's a bit annoying. Now, one of the most important buffs on this list is actually the 3% to all damage. It's one that is wildly underrated, and it's actually quite a hard one to pick up. Now, the reason for that is arcane mages are overshadowed by fire mages, so you're going to see them a lot more commonly throughout Cata. Beastmaster hunters are very overshadowed by survival hunters, and again, you're not going to see them very often. Now, Ret Paladins are a good option to pick these up. They also bring a second blessing, they bring some utility in Freedom Sack, all that good stuff. Ret Pallies could be the pick here for both melee and caster comps. In terms of the 5% to base, all base stats, again, we talked about Mark of the Wild and Blessing the Kings. Strength and agility, similar to Wrath, you have Battle Shout or Horn of Winter, Strength of Earth Totem. Now you have plus stamina, and this is one of the best changes of Cata in my opinion. It's not just priests that bring this buff. Warriors can now bring this buff in Commanding Shout. It brings the same amount of stamina, the same buff. It's awesome. It's amazing. Now, max mana, mages bring it with Arcane Brilliance. Arcane Brilliance also does provide the 6% spell power, so it's a good kind of. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it brings it. Affliction Warlocks, again, you're not going to see very many of. It's actually the Fell Hunter that provides it. And, I mean, Demo's going to use the Fell Guards. I believe Destro uses Imp. So, yeah, you're not going to see very often a lesser Affliction. And Affliction is just not very good, unfortunately. Now, combat reses. There's one missing off this list, which is DK. Chamois obviously can res themselves with reincarnation. Now, combat reses work a little differently in Cata raids in that you don't get an unlimited amount of combat reses as long as you've got one off cooldown. You get a specific amount based on the fight, or not based on the fight, but yeah, fight length and all that other stuff. So if you die as a chamois, you don't just get to press Ank and nothing happens because you've just used your raid's combat res. Now, so this is going to mean that actually having a little bit of organization here is quite important, but druids, warlocks, DKs can bring raid combat reses, and shamans bring self combat res, I suppose. In terms of bloodlust, heroism, and now time warp, hunters also have this buff with ancient hysteria, I'm going to say it's called, which is a beastmaster only pet that can bring the buff. Plus armor, again, stone skin totem and devotion aura. I'm gonna have to double check that. I don't actually think it's called stone skin totem, but still. Now these actually stack somewhat in Wrath because improved Devo aura counts as a different spell ID, so you can have both. Stone skin totem doesn't stack with Devo aura in Cata. Now spell resist, I talked about this a little bit earlier. Different classes bring certain resists and more powerful resists, and some bring generic to everything. So Mark of the Wild, Blessing of Kings brings all of them. Priest brings Shadow Protection. Hunters can bring Nature Protection, but don't like it because it really, really does ruin their DPS. Pallies are great because they bring Fire, Frost, and Shadow Res as part of Resistance Aura. And Shamans bring Fire, Frost, and Nature as part of Elemental Resistance Totem, which is, again, very good. Spell pushback resist, totem attack, tranquil mind, and concentration aura. You can run these both at the same time if you really wanted to. It does help. It can help. So you now have minor mana and major mana replenishment. There's a little bit more usage of major mana replenishments in Cata, but they're not fantastic. We'll talk more. So the minor replenishment: Shadow Priest, Frost Mage, Destro Warlock, Resto Druids, which is awesome by the way, and Ret Pallies. Now, Resto Druid actually, I believe, works slightly differently to the rest in that it procs, which is the same as it works in Wrath. Whereas all the rest of them is like you do your rotation, there will be a buff on the group, it gives them some mana back. Woohoo! Now, again, Ret Pallies bringing this makes them an awesome addition into almost every raid comp. Frost Mage you're not going to see in raid comps. Destro Warlock's actually very good in Cata, as are Shadow Priest, so you're likely to see both of those. And Resto Druids, I believe it's their hot thing, so they put hots on someone or rejuve on someone, and it procs some resource for them. Major mana replenishments. Druids Innovate sucks so badly unless you put it on yourself in Cata. So you're going to see a lot of druids just using that for themselves, honestly, because it's just not worth putting it on anyone else. Resto Chamois Mana Tide Totem. I did a fight yesterday in Bastion of Twilight, and I used my Mana Tide Totem 3 times. You can pair this with things like Hymn of Hope still. It still does have some benefit. And it's not bad, actually. It's still a very, very good totem. I believe it is also now raid-wide, which is very helpful. And Priest Hymn of Hope, of course. And plus MP5, again, Shaman's Mana Spring Totem, Paladin's Blessing of Might, you're probably going to pick it up from one of those. Warlocks, you're not going to see Affliction. Now, that's all of the buffs. We're going to go over raid comps and things in the other video, but just generally, you're going to want to pick up as many of these that fit your raid comp as possible. in almost all circumstances. Now, briefly going through debuffs, because this is just as important. Rogues, warriors, druids can bring the same Sunder debuff, which is awesome. Ferals actually get to apply it all instantly as well, which is really, really nice. Bleed damage, arms warrior, feral druid, sub rogues. You're going to see all three of these in raid comps. Again, feral druids are likely to be a very good off tank, so you're expecting them to kind of keep the mangle up. Crit damage against bosses. Now, this is what I was saying when I talked about the elemental shaman buff, elemental oath. That's just a general crit buff, whereas you also have 5% crit for spells by fire mages and destrolocks. You're going to see both of those plenty in raids. So, I mean, 10% crit for casters is not bad. Now, minus 20% haste debuff, you're going to see blood DKs, or DKs in general. Feral druids bring this. Prop Hallies, every tank can bring this. Chamois will bring this with Earth Shock. Now, Elemental brings this just naturally. Enhancement brings this naturally, but you probably won't get it from a Resto Shaman. 8% magic debuff, again, same as same as Wrath, sorry. So balanced druids are going to be a very common applicator of that. So are assassination rogues, so are unholy DKs. Warlocks, you probably won't want to curse this, although I believe it's actually just auto-applied on one of the specs. I haven't played much Warlock yet. Physical damage debuff, Cobalt Rogue, you're going to see lots of those. Arms Warriors, you're going to see lots of those. Frost DKs, not so much. Now, healing debuff, there are some bosses where this is mandatory. So, first tier, I can think Maloriak. I understand you may not know which boss that is, but Maloriak has a buff that he puts on himself, which can be spell stolen, but it's going to get 1 or 2 ticks off almost every time. And on Heroic, if you haven't got a healing debuff, he's just going to gain like 10% health every time he casts it, and he casts it like 8 to 10 seconds. It's not ideal. Now, there's lots of different applicants of this. Fury Warriors, Rogues, Arms Warriors, Hunters, Shadow Priests, Demo Warlocks are going to also apply it with Fel Guards. It's going to be on most of the time in most raids, to be honest. Physical damage output debuff. Now, this is very important. Now, some of these are much, much better than others. So, Blood DKs and Protection Paladins auto apply this debuff, which is incredible. Feral Druids and Warriors have to actually manually apply this, or mainly Prot Warriors, but you know what I mean. Arms and Fury can both apply it and may have to in certain scenarios. And Warlocks can apply it with Curse of Weakness. Now, they're rarely going to do that because most tanks will be able to bring it themselves. Prot Paladins and Blood DKs being able to auto apply this is very, very nice. And cast speed debuff. Now, very rarely that you're going to see benefit to this, but Curse of Tongues from a Warlock, Mind Numbing Poison from a Rogue, and DKs can do it with Necrotic Strike, which you would never ever use. So you're probably going to get that from the Rogue. Now, I want to quickly just briefly talk about 3 different classes that are going to be very, very key to bringing your raid buffs in Cata. Rogues. Now, rogues bring quite a lot. They also have the ability to switch between poisons on their ranged weapon, which has minimal impact on their DPS generally over a fight, but they can do things like fan of knives and apply mind numbing, wound poison, crippling, anything. They can do so much utility that actually rogues are going to be very, very important. Hunters. Now, hunter pets can bring almost any buff in the game. Yeah, that's insane. One of the only things they can't bring actually is the 3% to damage unless they are Beastmaster or a combat res. Everything else, I believe they actually can bring in some way or another, which is absurd. And that's debuffs as well, by the way. So if you are missing a very, very important buff, make sure you speak to your hunter. And shamans. Shamans bring a earth totem where they have strength of earth, they have stone skin, they have flame totem where they're pretty much always going to bring something useful there, although enhancement has to use actually searing, but never mind. In water, they bring resistances, they bring mana spring, they bring healing stream, which is actually very good in Cata, just as even like enhancement or elemental brings that very well. And on the air totem, they bring Wind Fury and Wrath of Air. They bring so many different options that shamans are going to be key to your group as well. So, guys, thank you for watching. More videos coming tomorrow. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.